My wife betrayed me and lied that her wallet with $3,000 was stolen, but in reality, she bought rings for herself and her lover. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about uncovering a web of lies that runs deeper than you could ever imagine. It explores what happens when the person you trust most is leading a double life and the lengths one might go to uncover the truth. A few weeks ago, on an ordinary Thursday morning, a father was deep in the usual chaos of getting his two children ready for school at 7:30 a.m. The commotion was briefly halted by the phone ringing loudly, sparking curiosity about who could be calling at such an early hour. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar area code, which heightened the curiosity. To his surprise, it was his wife, Lisa, on the other end. She worked for a small marketing firm, and her call immediately got his attention. He took care of the kids and worked from home, while she was always on the go, working at a printing company downtown. Despite their different schedules, they made it work and lived comfortably in a cozy suburban home with 4 bedrooms and a swimming pool, blessed with a wide circle of friends. Lisa explained that the night before, while she was in the hotel lobby picking up a newspaper, her purse had been stolen. She asked him to cancel their credit cards right away and request new ones. Lisa had already informed her boss, Sarah, who was arranging for new American Express company cards to be sent to her overnight so she could have them before leaving the next day. Sarah was also transferring some money to help Lisa get by. Lisa mentioned being distracted and leaving her purse at the cashier's counter while grabbing some more reading material. When she returned, it was gone. The cashier had been busy with another customer and didn't notice anything unusual. Her driver's license was also in the purse, and the hotel had sent staff to check nearby dumpsters. Despite managing to cancel the credit cards before any unauthorized charges were made, the wallet with Lisa's driver's license and other non-credit card items had yet to be recovered. He pushed that worry aside, and life went on as usual. However, he found a statement from Lisa's Fidelity account, where she kept a separate investment fund from the inheritance she received after her parents' tragic accident a few years back. While searching for their home insurance policy, he stumbled upon a folder with monthly statements from her account. He remembered that the inheritance was around $350,000 and was pleasantly surprised to find it had grown to over $400,000. While reviewing the statement, he noticed a withdrawal of $3,000 from the money market account about 6 weeks ago. Curious about how she had used that money, he decided to investigate further into her money market account. To his surprise, he found that she had written a substantial check to a local jewelry store just a few days after losing her purse in the same city. He wondered what she could have bought at that jewelry store, as she had not mentioned buying anything for him or anyone else. After some thought, he decided to visit the jewelry store's website and noted down their phone number for further inquiry. He called the store and spoke to a representative who looked up the transaction and asked about the nature of the problem with the rings. Puzzled, he wondered what kind of rings Lisa could have bought. The store representative clarified that Lisa had visited the store visibly distressed, mentioning that her wedding and engagement rings had been stolen. She wanted to replace them, using the company's credit card as collateral and later sending a check to cover the cost. The store provided a 90-day warranty for such situations. This was confusing because Lisa had spoken of replacing her wedding and engagement rings, but never mentioned losing them, only the theft of her purse. It took him some time to process this new information. It was becoming increasingly clear that the rings should have been inside her purse when it was stolen. But why would she carry them in her purse if she did not want to hide her marital status from others? To the best of his knowledge, there were no professional constraints related to revealing one's marital status. However, if she wanted to appear unmarried in certain social situations, disturbing thoughts began to circulate in his mind, suggesting that she might have been contemplating an affair while away from home. The mere idea made his stomach turn. They had been married for 11 years and were blessed with 2 wonderful children, Adam, age 8, and Emma, age 6. He believed they had a perfect marriage and a picture-perfect family. Their personal life seemed fulfilling to him, or at least that is what he had thought. Lisa traveled once a month, staying for 2 or 3 nights in distant cities. If she harbored intentions of such actions, she might have seen it as a discreet opportunity. It seemed that losing the rings had deeply troubled her, leading her to opt for replacements that closely resembled the originals. He had bought those rings with his modest earnings, so they were not extravagant, and crafting a near replica was not too costly. She could have reported the loss to the insurance company, but he probably would have found out. If her purse was genuinely stolen at the hotel, she should have reported it. He wondered what she claimed was missing. He decided to locate the hotel's contact number and made the call. The hotel confirmed having a written report of the incident. He requested a copy, which was faxed to him shortly. The report, composed and signed by Lisa herself, stated that her purse was stolen while she was dancing in the hall. She had left her purse at the booth where she was seated, and when she returned, it had vanished. Remarkably, Lisa explicitly noted her hesitation to involve the police. As he absorbed this information, his thoughts raced, overwhelmed by the implications of what he had uncovered. She had deceived him not only by concealing the truth about the stolen rings, but also by inventing a story about shoplifting. While there could be an alternative explanation, his mind could not come up with anything other than the unsettling thoughts swirling in his head. It became clear that he needed to understand the significance of losing those rings, or else they would persistently occupy his thoughts and drive him to madness. One thing was increasingly evident: those rings were inside her purse when she was dancing with an unknown man. Several weeks had passed since the incident, and she was about to embark on another trip in a few days. He realized he needed to gather more details about her upcoming trip. He wanted to understand what she typically did in the evenings when she was away. If she was involved with other men, perhaps losing the rings had served as a wake-up call, prompting her to reassess her behavior. He knew that if he discovered her infidelity, it would likely spell the end of their marriage, though he dreaded considering how it might affect their children. She was undoubtedly a great mother, but he could not bear the thought of her having custody of the kids, especially with her frequent business trips. His mind raced, desperately seeking any potential clues to shed light on her faithfulness. He wondered if she engaged in unprotected encounters or insisted on using contraceptives. He assumed she would opt for protection because she would not want to risk bringing home infections or the possibility of an unwanted pregnancy. After all, he had a vasectomy after the birth of their second child, making pregnancy impossible. She could not rely on the men she met to have protection, so she must have had her supply. One question remained: where did she keep them? It was unlikely she stored them at their house or in the car, so the office seemed the most likely place. She probably carried them with her on business trips. He knew she transported her work papers, laptop, and presentation materials in a large briefcase she kept in her office. But if she had an early morning flight, she'd bring her bag home the night before and then pack it in a suitcase for the airport. This detail was crucial. He needed to find an opportunity to search the briefcase before her departure. He hoped her next trip involved an early morning flight. He made a deliberate choice to remain calm and composed, not displaying any signs that something was amiss. When the kids returned from school, he was occupied with various tasks and had little time to dwell on his suspicions. Nonetheless, the specter of her infidelity continued to linger in the back of his mind. When Lisa returned from work, he found himself in a bit of a mess while preparing dinner. He accidentally spilled a dish of beans, creating a mess on the floor. The resulting chaos of cleaning up and managing the kids' activities left him looking somewhat disheveled. Fortunately, she didn't seem to notice any unusual behavior from him at that moment. After the commotion settled and everything was cleaned up, he greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. They sat down at the table as they normally did to enjoy dinner and engage in their typical chit-chat. Given their usual routine, he didn't expect her to have any growing suspicions about her upcoming trip. He inquired about her trip, and she confirmed she would be leaving the next morning at 7:30 a.m. for Denton. She mentioned needing something to keep her going until she returned on Friday. He playfully responded, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. To his surprise, she blushed in response. Her comment about bringing her briefcase home the night before her trip suggested she wouldn't be stopping at the office before heading to the airport. Given her seemingly genuine attitude about the upcoming trip in front of their children and him, one might assume that either she hadn't been involved in any infidelity during her travels, or she had become skilled at concealing such behavior. He hoped to uncover the truth when he examined the contents of her briefcase on the evening before her planned trip. Lisa returned home in high spirits. She parked her car next to his in the garage as usual and appeared visibly excited. This left him wondering if her excitement was due to their conversation or if there was another reason behind it. Upon entering the house, she didn't bring her briefcase with her, assuming it was still in the car. He was busy preparing dinner, so they sat down at the table. She casually asked if he could retrieve her suitcase from the garage after they finished eating. He agreed and went to the garage to retrieve her suitcase. Upon inspecting the car, he didn't find the briefcase inside, leading him to believe it was securely placed in the trunk. Expecting this, he had already devised a plan to access it later in the evening. When he returned to the bedroom with her suitcase, he asked for the car keys, explaining that his tire seemed to be slowly losing air and needed fixing. She handed him the car keys, proposing he use the spare tire, but he insisted on getting it properly fixed. He hurried back to the garage before she could change her mind, drove her car out of the garage, and headed to the junction station, owned by his friend Tom from school. Pulling up in front of one of the service bays, he honked his horn to get Tom's attention. Tom noticed him and opened the bay door, allowing him to drive in before closing it behind him. Tom asked if there was trouble at home, sensing something was amiss. He admitted there might be and opened the trunk to retrieve Lisa's briefcase, placing it on a nearby workbench. Tom, realizing a customer needed him, left him to search the briefcase meticulously. To his shock, he discovered an open package of contraceptives with about 3 pieces missing, confirming his worst fears. He carefully placed the package back where he found it and closed the briefcase. He stashed it in the trunk and secured it just as Tom returned, asking if he had found what he was looking for. He replied that he had and asked Tom to check the tire pressure while he pretended to have resolved the issue. Tom complied without saying a word, showing his loyalty as a friend. As he filled the tank with fuel at a gas station, he was filled with gratitude toward Tom for his understanding. Driving back home, a sense of darkness enveloped his thoughts and panic began to intensify, fueled by anger and frustration. It was difficult to grasp how Lisa could betray their marriage, their children, and him in such a manner. Amid the receding emotions, he shifted his focus to planning his next step to secure custody of their children. He needed concrete evidence of her infidelity and misconduct. Despite her shortcomings as a partner, he acknowledged her role as a good mother. The children deserved a maternal figure in their lives. While visitation rights would likely be granted, his ultimate goal was to gain full legal custody. She would have to explain the reasons behind their divorce to her brother and friends. He entered the house, stating that everything was set and it was just a minor issue with a nail. She responded, still avoiding eye contact. Seeking solace, he went to the kitchen for a beer and then settled in the family room with the kids, who were absorbed in watching a TV show. About 30 minutes later, Lisa joined them in the room and sat beside him on the couch. By then, his emotions had settled, but a deep sadness washed over him as he realized their once happy family was soon to be a thing of the past. To his surprise, Lisa moved closer and snuggled up to him, whispering that she loved him. Despite her betrayal, there was still a hint of affection from her. He could not help but wonder why she did it. Was it for excitement or a need for more connection than he could provide? He might never fully understand, but what was clear was the damage to his trust in her. They put the kids to bed together, and as she kissed their children goodnight, he could not help but look at her, knowing that by morning she would be gone. Their young minds were already accustomed to her frequent travels, so their unease was minimal. That night, they made love, but it lacked the usual passion. Sensing his distress, Lisa asked anxiously if his stomach was still bothering him. He nodded and replied that it was, but that he could handle it, desperately hoping she would choose their love and marriage over the upcoming trip. He asked if she needed to go on this trip, deep down wishing it were all just a nightmare that would vanish. She sighed and replied apologetically that the trip was necessary. With a heavy heart, he sighed and said it was time to get some sleep, as she had to get up early for her flight. He took a quick shower now so he wouldn't have to worry about it in the morning. She headed to the shower, and an impulse led him to inspect her suitcase to see what she had packed. Though the clothes on top seemed businesslike, he was surprised to find, upon closer examination, a selection of her most seductive lingerie, and a small black cocktail dress in which she always looked irresistible. Respecting her personal space, he put everything back as he found it and closed the suitcase. The sight of those items confirmed his suspicions and deepened his despair. His mind raced with thoughts of her intentions for the trip. Was she planning to meet someone? How long had this been going on? These questions swirled in his head, making it difficult to think clearly. As she finished her shower and got ready for bed, he did his best to maintain a facade of normalcy. He couldn't let on that he knew anything, not yet. He needed more proof, something concrete that he could use in court if it came to that. The next morning, as she left for the airport, he kissed her goodbye, his heart heavy with the knowledge of her betrayal. He watched her drive away, feeling a mix of sorrow and determination. It was time to take action to protect his children and himself from further hurt. He resolved to gather the evidence he needed and confront her when the time was right. Until then, he had to stay strong for his kids and keep their lives as stable as possible amidst the storm that was brewing. He carefully returned everything to its place, closed the suitcase, and went back to bed. He couldn't sleep that night, and when he heard Lisa stirring around 5 in the morning, he remained in bed, choosing not to bid her farewell as was their custom. He felt a mix of weariness and sadness. Bending down to kiss him on the cheek before leaving, she inquired if he was still not feeling well. He simply nodded, struggling to express the turmoil within him. With the sound of the garage door closing, he finally got out of bed and made his way to the shower. He knew the day ahead would be filled with challenges. After seeing the kids off to school and having breakfast, he turned to the phone book to search for private detective services in the yellow pages. His main criteria were to locate an agency with a nationwide presence, preferably in the city Lisa was heading to. He reached out to several agencies and eventually found one with a branch in her destination area. He set up a meeting with them for the same morning, hoping they could provide the necessary information. Next on his agenda was finding a divorce attorney. A friend had recommended a specific lawyer, so he found his contact details and gave him a call. He arranged an appointment for the afternoon, hoping this lawyer could guide him through the challenging process they were about to face. When he arrived at the private investigator's office, he discussed his concerns and arranged for Lisa to be surveilled on the evening she was away. He provided them with a photo of Lisa and details of her travel route to aid in their identification. They assured him they would gather photos and compile a report on her activities as soon as her business day concluded. To ensure seamless communication, they agreed to send information via email to their Denton office and promised to provide a comprehensive report by Monday morning. Satisfied with their commitment, he made a substantial upfront payment for their services. They informed him they might not be able to capture photographs, but they would strive to provide as many incriminating photos as possible. He agreed that it would suffice. His afternoon meeting with the lawyer proceeded as anticipated. The lawyer explained that in their state, divorce follows a no-fault principle, meaning there's no need to assign blame. However, given that he was the primary caregiver for their children, it was likely he would be granted custody. He needed to understand that Lisa would receive substantial visitation rights for their children. Furthermore, their property would be divided equally, with both sides getting an even split of 50. Alimony wouldn't be necessary due to their similar incomes, but since he would have custody of the children, Lisa would be obligated to pay child support. As for the inheritance she obtained, it held no significance to him, and she needed to retain it for herself. His top priority was the well-being of their children. He instructed the lawyer to prepare the necessary documents to be delivered to Lisa on Monday, citing irreconcilable differences. He also asked the lawyer to agree that she would vacate their house immediately upon their divorce. The lawyer confirmed that as the children's guardian, he had the authority to make this request. It was decided that once the children reached 18, they would sell the house, and the proceeds would be divided between them. Leaving the lawyer's office, he felt a sense of contentment, realizing that life would move forward for him and the children while Lisa would have to face the consequences of her betrayal. At that moment, he didn't take immediate action concerning their finances, insurance, or other legal matters. He assumed he'd have sufficient time to address these issues after serving her with divorce papers. Given her inheritance, he believed she wouldn't have to be concerned about her share of their joint savings. When it was time for school to conclude, he headed home to catch the bus. On Friday afternoon, when Lisa returned, he kindly offered to take care of her laundry, but she politely declined, insisting she would handle it later. He couldn't help but grin, recognizing how playfully mischievous he had been. Deep down, he fully comprehended why she preferred to manage the laundry herself. As the evening settled in, he watched Lisa move around the house with an odd sense of detachment. It was as if she was already a ghost in their home, her betrayal casting a shadow over every interaction. Despite his inner turmoil, he maintained a facade of normalcy for the sake of their children. The weekend ahead would be challenging, but he was determined to gather the evidence needed to protect his kids and himself. The path forward was clear, even if it was filled with heartache and uncertainty. Lisa needed to keep her extramarital affairs concealed at all costs. Later, as they lay in bed, Lisa expressed worry about his ongoing stomach issues and suggested he see a doctor. He playfully responded, letting her know that he intended to try a new medication recommended by a friend to address his persistent stomach problems. He expressed optimism that this would resolve the issue and bring her back to him soon. When they embraced, she whispered that she missed him greatly. On Monday, as the kids left for school and Lisa headed to work, he received a call from the detective agency informing him that they had a report ready. He told them he'd be there shortly, and within 30 minutes he was sitting down with the office manager to discuss the details. The office manager informed him that a report with attached photos had been faxed from Denton that morning. He admitted he hadn't had time to read the entire report, but upon a quick scan and a glance at the photos, it seemed highly incriminating. He took a copy of the report and started reading its contents. The subject of the report was identified as Lisa Brown. According to the report records, the surveillance of Lisa began at 5:17 p.m. on Wednesday, June 16th, in the lobby of the Denton Marriott Hotel. Her identity was confirmed by comparing a photo obtained from the Millville office. Upon closer examination of the report, it turned out that she was wearing a company badge, further confirming her identity. Moreover, the report detailed the movements of the subject and noted she was carrying a briefcase when she entered the elevator. A staff member accompanied her and verified her arrival at room 414 at 5:23 p.m. It's important to note that the report emphasized that the subject was alone at that time. Additionally, the report included a photograph labeled Exhibit 1A, showing Lisa dressed professionally before entering the room. When looking at the photo, it was clear she still wore her rings. The photo was taken discreetly using a mobile phone. The report stated that the agents had rented a room across from the subject's room. At 6:31 p.m., they received a signal that Lisa had left her room and was heading for the elevator. A minute later, at 6:32 p.m., she exited the elevator and entered the lobby. The report noted she was dressed as described in Exhibit 1B. Upon examining Exhibit 1B, it became evident that Lisa was wearing a small black cocktail dress paired with high-heeled shoes. She was also adorned with a necklace he had given her for their 10th anniversary celebration. However, what stood out the most was the absence of wedding rings on her left hand. The photo clearly showed she wasn't wearing them. The photo, identified as Exhibit 1D, displayed Lisa and a man in a tight embrace, engaged in a passionate kiss while seated in a booth. The intensity of their connection was visible in the picture. At 8:51 p.m., the report noted that both individuals left the restaurant. They then took the elevator and ascended to Lisa's floor. Another photo, labeled Exhibit 1E, captured the moment when Lisa and the man entered her room, specifically room 414. In this image, Lisa appeared slightly intoxicated but undeniably pleased with the evening's events. At 11:13 p.m., the man exited Lisa's room and left the building. The report included the license plate number of a car registered to Michael H. Tate, residing at 1424 Aaliyah Drive in Denton. Notably, Michael H. Tate was married and had 2 young children. As he delved further into the report's details, it became evident that Lisa repeated her actions the following night with another man. The detailed surveillance logs and accompanying photos painted a clear and painful picture of her infidelity. Each interaction was meticulously documented, leaving little room for doubt about her actions. Reading through the final pages of the report, he felt a deep sense of betrayal and sadness. The woman he had loved and trusted had been living a double life, deceiving him and their children. It was now clear that their marriage had been a facade, hiding her secret affairs. The next steps were evident. He needed to confront Lisa with the evidence and take legal action to protect his family and himself. The pain was unbearable, but he knew that moving forward was the only way to find healing and rebuild his life. The report bore the signature of an investigator from Denton. This revelation filled him with deep anxiety and resentment. It became clear that Lisa was leading a promiscuous life while she was away from home. He couldn't come to terms with her actions. It was a betrayal that exceeded his worst expectations. Even the fact that Lisa had lost her wedding rings didn't stop her from being careless. After settling the bill with the private detective, he thanked them and left, making sure to take 2 additional copies of the report recorded on a CD to keep them safe. Once he got back home, he wasted no time and immediately called his divorce attorney. He asked about the status of the divorce papers, and the attorney confirmed they were ready for filing. Without hesitation, he instructed them to initiate the filing process and specifically requested that the papers be served to her publicly at her workplace the following day. The attorney assured him that this could be done smoothly and asked for her workplace address, which he promptly provided. His intentions were clear. He aimed to humiliate her during the legal proceedings. Handing her the divorce papers at her workplace not only satisfied his desire for revenge, but also served as a form of justice for her actions. That night, there was no love between them. Lisa seemed to sense that something was wrong, perhaps suspecting that he had discovered something unsettling. Though she didn't directly voice her concerns, she expressed hope for his quick recovery. Interestingly, she also appeared somewhat reserved, but he chose not to comment on it and simply ignored it. The next morning, he woke up early after a night of little sleep. He immersed himself in work on the computer until he heard the children waking up, and then he went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. After the meal, he said goodbye to Lisa when she left for work. She approached him for a hug and a kiss, but he responded with a half-playful embrace, encouraging her to leave quickly. At that moment, he sensed she might have had an inkling of what awaited her. As he closed the door behind her, tears welled up in her eyes, and she whispered that she loved him. After her departure, profound sadness washed over him, and he felt an urge to release his tears. Yet he quickly composed himself as the children required his attention, and he needed to prepare them for the school bus. Around 10:45 a.m., the phone rang, disrupting their morning routine. Displaying Lisa's workplace on the caller ID, he answered the call without uttering a word. There was a brief pause as the caller realized he wasn't inclined to engage in conversation. In a trembling voice and a whisper, Lisa said she was sorry. Shortly after, the line fell silent, and he remained silent as well. Lisa did not return home that night, and he wondered if she continued her deceitful game, seemingly indifferent to her husband. While he recognized his anger was justified, he also considered that he might have been overly harsh on her. The children, disheartened by their mother's absence, wondered where she was. To uplift their spirits, he invited them to have dinner at a McDonald's cafe. By the time they returned home after dinner, the kids were exhausted and went straight to bed. The next morning, Lisa called with a request to come home and pack her things and talk. Initially, a sense of guilt welled up within him, but it quickly dissipated. He replied calmly, suggesting she come between 9 and noon when the kids and he wouldn't be there. Regarding their conversation, he made it clear that he would speak with her one-on-one in his lawyer's office only after she signed, notarized, and returned the divorce documents. Then he would listen to whatever she had to say. There was a sob on the line before Lisa answered affirmatively. Shortly after, the phone fell silent again. She signed the divorce papers, and 6 months later, their marriage officially came to an end. It turned out that she became pregnant during the affair. Unfortunately, when she attempted to conceal it from her last lover, contraception failed. Considering it was near her childbearing age, even if he hadn't found out about her infidelity through the lost rings, the truth would probably have come out eventually. There were rumors that she had started dating again. If she ever got close to getting married again, he thought about honestly warning her future spouse about her unfaithfulness. It seemed unnecessary for her to deceive and hurt another person. They had a meeting, and during their conversation in his lawyer's office, he shared his thoughts with her. She pleaded with him to reconsider the divorce decision. She talked about how difficult it was for her not to have unrestricted access to their children. However, he explained that he couldn't trust her anymore. Then she mentioned that she had seen a psychologist who diagnosed her with nymphomania. She assured him that her impulses were now under control. Despite her explanations, he told her that it wasn't enough for him. Even if she claimed to have her urges in check, the fact that she hadn't sought help earlier indicated a lack of proactive effort on her part. If she had addressed her cravings from the beginning, she might not have found herself in the current situation. When he left the lawyer's office, she continued to cry. Having recently reconnected with a school friend who kept him updated, he learned that this friend worked at a nightclub. The friend mentioned seeing his ex-wife at the club on several weekend nights. She frequented the club with different men and behaved provocatively. He was deeply hurt that his children had such an irresponsible mother. Perhaps his ex-wife never recovered from nymphomania. A friend of Lisa's also called him and informed him that Lisa was in poor health. She said his ex-wife needed his assistance because she had contracted herpes. Meanwhile, she continued her promiscuous lifestyle. He sympathized with her but conveyed that he couldn't offer any help, nor did he want to. Lisa chose this lifestyle and its associated health issues. He began dating again and found someone special. This woman, around his age and divorced herself, had discovered her ex-husband's infidelity and didn't tolerate such behavior. She possessed strength and resilience, qualities he genuinely admired. It seemed that his children also liked her. He believed this was a natural progression, and it was only a matter of time before he considered taking their relationship to a new level. Lisa's betrayal changed his life forever, but it also taught him the value of trust and the strength to rebuild. The scars remained, serving as a reminder of what he had overcome. Yet, as he moved forward with his life, a part of him couldn't help but wonder what truly drove her to such deception. Was it really just a moment of weakness? Or was there something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? Perhaps in time the full truth would reveal itself. Until then, he kept his eyes open, always aware that sometimes the real story lay hidden just beneath the facade.